You've probably all seen the reviews.
Look at that, baby!
Panasonic S5 II.
Lumix S5 II.
The brand new Panasonic S5 II.
They finally did it. The Lumix S5 Mark II.
Panasonic S5 II.
All right, fellas, time for a new phase. You get it?
Yeah, I get it. I have to be honest with you. When the Lumix S5 Mark II was announced on the 4th of January, I got really excited about it. Panasonic bringing face detect autofocus to their cameras is a big thing. And it has some good video specs as well. But I don't use autofocus all that much, and my G9 and GH6 can produce beautiful images. So, as a Micro Four Thirds user, is the S5 Mark II worth considering? Let's talk about it. I think Panasonic is shaking up the market with this new camera. It's got face detect autofocus that seems to work really well, and it has a really attractive price point. The thing is, it's a full frame camera, and therefore there are some serious considerations. Let's start with lenses. Over time, you've probably built up a lens collection for your Micro Four Thirds camera. I know I have for my G9 and GH6. They're all relatively compact compared to full frame glass, especially the telephoto lenses, and the quality of many MFT lenses is very good. There's also a wide variety of lenses to choose from in the Micro Four Thirds mount, and you can adapt basically any lens to it as well. Also, for wildlife in particular, the reach you can get with a Micro Four Thirds sensor and a relatively compact telephoto lens is a huge plus for the system. In order to get the same reach with a full-frame Lumix body, you would need a massive and expensive lens. The point I'm trying to make here is that many of us have invested in a collection of lenses for our Micro Four Thirds camera bodies, and those lenses way outlive those camera bodies. Stepping into full frame would mean investing in a lens collection all over again. So, while the price of this S5 Mark II is very compelling, the budget to actually be able to use the camera needs to be a lot bigger when you're coming from a Micro Four Thirds camera, because of the lenses you need to get. Now, you could argue that it might be wise to sell all your Micro Four Thirds gear and with that money jump over to full frame. But that's where, in my opinion, the other downsides become obvious. Take, for example, rolling shutter performance. It's the jello effect you can see with vertical lines in the frame when doing pans with a camera. Those vertical lines appear to be bent. Micro Four Thirds sensors are considerably smaller than full frame sensors. That, in general, means that with a Micro Four Thirds sensor, the readout speed of a sensor can be much higher, which is beneficial to rolling shutter performance. With the GH6, rolling shutter performance is really good. I've never had any issues with it. The S5 Mark II, on the other hand, seems to have not quite the rolling shutter performance you'd hope for. Another thing is frame rates, bit rates and resolution. The GH6 has basically everything you could wish for. 5.8K open gate in 10-bit 420, 5.7K up to 60p, 4K UHD and DCI in all intra and 10-bit 422, and 4K 120p to name a few. And all uncropped. This gives you high quality and a lot of flexibility. The S5 Mark II caps out at 60p when it comes to 4K. There's no 120p in 4K, and the 60p has an APS-C or 1.5 times crop. Also, there's no big difference in the maximum resolution, with a 6K open gate mode that's similar to the GH6's 5.8K open gate. The S5 Mark II also does not have all-eye options. If you don't know what all-eye means, subscribe to my channel because I'm planning on making a video about codecs. And from what I've seen in the reviews, the HD slow motion footage, especially the 120p, doesn't really look that good. Whereas the quality and high frame rates out of the GH6 is quite good. Panasonic is clearly marketing this camera by emphasizing the new phase detect autofocus system and the new real-time LUT feature. This feature means that you can bake in a lot into your footage while you're recording or taking stills. Now, while this feature is potentially useful for example, matching the S5 Mark II to, say, a Blackmagic camera in a multicam setup, it wouldn't be a reason for me to get the S5 Mark II. You can easily do the same thing in post-production. Of course, the biggest thing about the S5 Mark II is the new phase detection autofocus system. Looking at the reviews, it seems to work very well, which is a huge leap forwards compared to the contrast DFD autofocus in basically all other models that can be unusable in certain situations. But the autofocus on the G9 and the GH6 is not entirely unusable, and for me, it mostly does what I need it to do. I use autofocus for these talking head videos, for example. The question you need to ask yourself is, how much do you need autofocus? Are you using it occasionally, or do you need it all the time and you rely on it? For example, when I am using an autofocus lens like the Panasonic Leica 12-60 or the Panasonic Leica 100-400, I will use the autofocus to, when I'm in manual focus, acquire focus by push to focus, and then adjust manually from there, and that's useful. But in general, I just use manual focus anyway. There are many advantages to using manual focus, one of which is the confidence that the thing you want to be in focus is actually in focus. An autofocus system might decide to focus on something else rather than the specific thing you wanted to focus on. Another thing is focus pools. With manual focus, you are in control of the timing, the speed, and the smoothness of the focus pools. With autofocus, it's all dependent on what the autofocus system thinks it needs to do and the settings you dial in. And with some lenses, you also don't even have a choice but using manual focus, because they're fully manual lenses, like these DZOfilm CineZoom lenses I have. So having phase detect autofocus is not necessarily going to always accomplish what you want. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not being negative about the S5 Mark II. The fact of the matter is that the S5 Mark II is a very compelling camera with a lot of nice features like shutter angle, good low light performance, SSD recording in the S5 Mark II X, and of course good autofocus. And that might be a reason for you to get that camera. But if I would have the budget, I would not jump ship to full frame, but probably get the S5 Mark II X to complement my G9 and GH6 for situations where I need good autofocus and low light performance, and as a B cam. And to be honest, I usually prefer not to have the background blur to oblivion, so there goes the whole ultra shallow depth of field argument for full frame for me. One thing I hope is that this new autofocus system will come to the Lumix Micro Four Thirds line of cameras as well, because it's nice to have. For now, I'm sticking with my G9 and GH6. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on this. Are you considering the S5 Mark II? Let me know in the comments. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and maybe hit that notification bell, and I hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.